This week, episode 255 of Stogie Geeks, we got a little bit of a reverse format. The first volume or section of Stogie Geeks, I'm going to talk to you about some listener feedback and some emails that some of our Stogie Geeks listeners have taken the time out to write me and ask me some questions. They're on some various topics. By the way, if you have a question for us, all you have to do is go to joeh@stogiegeeks.com. Flash me an email, and we can respond that way. And then the second section is going to be the Stogies of the Week, where I'm going to review what I've been smoking. Interesting smoking points, so you want to stay tuned for that. And then the third segment, we have an interview with Robert Holt from Southern Draw Cigars, right here on episode 255 of the Stogie Geek Show.
This is a Security Weekly production.
Welcome to episode 255. I am your host this week, Joe Hozempa. The format this week is just a little switched around in the order. The first section, we are going to talk to you. I'm going to talk to you directly about some listener feedback from some emails that have been piling in for a while at joeh@stogiegeeks.com. Then second section, Stogies of the Week, an awesome interview coming up with Robert Holt of Southern Draw Cigars. So thank you for tuning in. I am your host, Joe Hozempa. I have my laptop today there because I'm going to be reading some emails, and it's a little bit easier to read on a tablet for there. So this section, as some of you Stogie Geeks listeners have been known, I have taken on the position as co-host of this show with Paul since the beginning of the year. And, we're getting some good listener feedback. Again, all the emails can go to joeh@stogiegeeks.com in regards to the show and some comments. But I've taken some emails out that kind of raise some different concerns. So concerns and topics and stuff like that. So kind of bear with me here if you could. We have Daniel writes, he says, Joe, love the show and I listen to it every week. I heard you talk about the doc. Good interview. I agree with him about rotating lighters, and I understand your problem when it comes to lighters. I just want to let you know some of the tips that I have heard from a BOTL, that's Brother of the Leaf, about how to take care of your lighters. Now, keep up the good work, Daniel. So this is one of those situations where I have, throughout the past year, has said that I just cannot find a good lighter. I get gifted sometimes lighters that are, over $50, some of them that are over $80. And one of the things that Daniel told me was, number one, use good butane. Now, define good butane. He gave me a couple of brands. I've actually done that, and then I've actually switched. But another thing that he mentioned is that when you do the filling into the deposit here, what happens is it comes out cold. And he says, do you light it right away afterwards? And I says, oh yeah, of course. This is all over the course of some emails. And, I do. And he says, yeah, he goes, let it rest. And let me tell you something, Daniel. Ever since you told me that back since April 25th, I've actually have had this lighter, and this is, it's a pretty decent lighter, and it's been working. So that tip in itself, I use the brand of butane that you said I should, so for the fuel, and then from there, I pour it in, let it sit. I use another lighter if I'm doing it, and then like 5 minutes later, you light it up and you're good to go. So that was some pretty positive feedback that really resonated with me. And let me tell you something. He flashed me this email here on April 25th, and it's been going. And this is by far the longest time that I've had a lighter there, and it's starting to come unraveled. But anyway, it's still a long shot over there. Another one came there. I think this was pretty. This was a fun episode. This email is dated back June 30th. He put, "Hi Joe, you just did a rum pairing show where you were the host. I think this was one of the first shows where I was the regular host for there. You had mentioned Oasis rum, and that's the one that you always keep on your counter. I never caught the name of it. I think it's Oasis. You also mentioned that you were talking about the Mount Gay rum, and you said that it was good to pair. I specifically, this is Tony, he specifically likes to pair rum with Ron Zacapa 23. My thing is Tony, who doesn't, right? Ron Zacapa is a great choice when it comes to rum pairing. But see, you know, here on the Stogie Geeks show, especially from my perspective, when I'm giving a review, either be it, you know, we're going to use this alcohol or if I'm doing a Sticks of the Week review, one of the things that I like to do is I like to consider price as a factor. You know, to have it both. Okay, if you want to splurge yourself, go Ron Zacapa, knock yourself out. But there are the point of the rum pairing show was to let the Stogie Geeks listener know that you don't have to go buy rum at 50, 60, 80, whichever. You can buy it at regular price rum. And regular price rum, something that's in your consumer warehouse there, you know, you can get that and it'll go good. You know, that was the point. I also did that. I also did a wine tasting one where I didn't use super expensive wines because personally, I do mix wine with cigars. That was a pretty good episode too. But he wanted me to answer this question because he did throw Oasis rum and didn't go into Google. I think my Italianness, and I'm answering Tony, came out. Oasis was the solution that you mix with the rum. So in other words, like if you were to have a margarita or if you were to have a strawberry flavored daiquiri or anything like that, Oasis was that. It wasn't specifically Oasis rum there. And in regards to the rum that I keep on my counter, I actually do use the Boot Black brand, which if you missed the episode, that would go back to last episode 254 of Stogie Geeks. That is on my counter, and the Papa's Pillar is on my counter there. And then also in regards to tequila, because I mix both of those with the Boot Black brand, I usually go with any Blanco tequila. I'm not really going to start naming names there, but, you know, I actually had a client where we did a tequila and cigars pairing, and that might come soon in 2018 because we've already done wine and we've done rum, and we always have old fashions here. So, yeah. Another one I want to review here. This came up pretty cool. This was from John. He said, Joe H., you were talking about some cigar, which was a combination of a Liga No. 9 and a Padron 1964 made by Nat Chico. I tried to Google the cigar, came up empty-handed. Your experience sounded very interesting, and I was wondering how I can look into the cigar. Been a long-time listener. Thanks, John. And I did respond to John at that time and gave him the actual link. But, you know, it kind of got me thinking in regards to, okay, you know, sometimes when we're giving Stogies of the Week, you know, if there's three of us, we're going back and forth all the time. We're flashing, you know, the name, we're giving commentary. So that was a Nat Chico cigar, and the Nat Chico cigar makes a bunch of different lines of cigars. I have a couple of shop owners here in the Province Metro that kind of, you know, I'm blessed enough to have a good relationship with them to where they kind of give me stuff, you know, and say, oh, well, why don't you try this? And I actually came across the Nat Chico cigar, and they make the one specifically I was talking about, which if you go to natchico.com, you'll be able to find it. But I don't think that when you throw it into Google, you think it's Chico, like CHICO. No, it is spelled Nat, NATCICCO. So Nat Chico, right? I'm not up on Spanish. I'm full Italian, if you haven't noticed already, right? But it's Nat Chico, CHICCO.com. And if you go there, They have a bunch of cigar lines that are kind of interesting. The one specifically for this email was the Aniversario 1965 Liga number 4. Now, if you Google that cigar and throw that in, you end up finding out that there's a little bit of bad blood with the name of the cigar. Obviously, because it's combining two very big powerhouses there, and that's between them to go forth. But they also have some other sublines, which I've had off the top of my head, the Cuban Legends, and they've also have the Jamaican Rounds. I never really got into that, but they also have some rejects, which I think are pretty neat cigars. So check them out whenever you have a chance. It's Nat Chico, or Chico, and that's spelled NATCICCO.com. Another issue came up. This was pretty cool. I've had Carl email me with a local shop find, and I love these emails. He just said, Stogies at my local shop, and I just wanted to send them your way. Carl had the limited edition Lancero sampler from Rocky Patel. It comes in 10 different Lanceros. He sent me a bunch of pictures and stuff like that. I'm assuming that was probably right after our Lancero episode. And let me tell you, we toggle on this a bunch when either Joe D or Paul is on the set, where we speak about Lancero cigars. And here in the Northeast, they're a little bit tougher to... They kind of seem seasonal, but also from a sales perspective, some of the consumers don't really flock to them. And my suggestion to you is, when it comes to Lanceros, they are a unique cigar. It's a unique experience, and you owe it to yourself for a treat. But they're not portable. And what I mean by that is, you want to sit down with them when you have a chance to sit down, relax, and just smoke a cigar. You can do it with some friends and whatnot, but if you're out in your garage, or you're fishing or golfing or doing something, cutting the grass, a Lancero can require quite a bit of work there. But in regards to this limited edition sampler, I've actually came across this myself, and to respond to Carl, I never blown through all 10. I've had a couple that were gifted to me, and or I have some friends that will purchase some stuff, and we'll get together and then split them, and that's one of the joys that I like about the Stogie Geek rating that we have here when we do our sticks of the week. I like when we say box split or box split with a friend, because I really think that you owe it to yourself from your experience to actually do that. I want to go over a couple more emails, so please bear with me, because one of them gets into a situation that's happening down in Naples. And this one comes from Russell. Russell says, Joe, down here in Naples, we are starting a movement, and we need to spread the word so we can try to go for some support and then leverage towards a win. As one business, we cannot win the majority, but we can always fight. We have noticed that on Facebook, this is a very good point here. We have noticed that on Facebook has blocked some of our content promoting cigar events. Interesting, right? Owners and then he asked me not to use the name of this specific cigar shop down in Naples, in 2016 had 1,600 followers. Now in 2017, he's well over 2,000 followers on Facebook. Okay, I like where this is going. Business is growing, right? When he posts, when he has more people, it seems like we're getting less and less likes, and Facebook is still trying to promote us to advertise for it, even though the owner said that when they tried to promote the cigar event on Facebook, Facebook has not allowed the content to actually go through. That's going to get to my point over there soon. Okay, so it's happening again. Sometimes we cannot boost. However, I have a couple friends who are in the music industry, and when they post, the posts tend to go everywhere, and let alone if you're a cigar shop, they kind of gets back. It kind of gets back there. So, what are your thoughts? In 49 states, it seems to be that Naples, Florida, tends to get the less likes when it comes to Facebook. Now, I'm going to disregard that last comment because, realistically speaking, we don't have enough data to say, okay, if there is, if the post and likes are not being frequented on everyone else's Facebook walls, however that works there. But I can tell you that, realistically speaking, Russell, from Naples, when it comes to alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and Facebook specifically, since we're talking about Facebook, some of the posts do get rejected if you try to boost them, and some of them do get kind of limited over there too. My suggestion is pretty simple, okay? That's Facebook's option, okay? So if Facebook wants to ban or have posts subside or not be able to promote cigar events, Facebook has all that option. If you're a business owner, you need to tell the cigar shop owner of that business that, it's basically you throw your jabs at Facebook, you step to the right or left, right? I always jab and step to the left because, I'm a southpaw anyway, right? But, if a shop is just using Facebook, they got some other issues going on there too. Maybe the shop should consider doing a website, logging on, signing up to the email, blasting it through the email. That's another workaround. I've actually turned on a bunch of local cigar shops in the province metro because that has come up as well. One more I do want to review with you here. It was from the Carlson Sereno episode. It says, I really appreciate Wesley. Wesley seems to write me a lot, right? Back in April, he said he wished I would stop talking about tennis shoes and stuff. I appreciate the feedback. But however, Wesley says, hi, Joe and Paul. I appreciate your frank reviews on Stogies of the Week. No sugarcoating with many reviewers that you seem that... Let me start this all over, right? I appreciate your frank reviews on your Stogies of the Week section. You guys have no sugarcoating, which many reviewers online seem to do. Things are especially enjoyable when you have an in-studio guest who actually joins you for the Stogies of the Week. One of the things that, sometimes it just works out that way, Wesley, it's one of those things where, if the guests can stick around, I think it certainly adds. But you also got to consider from a business perspective, it puts the reps on the spot, and sometimes people don't like to be put on the spot. I personally don't mind it. I'm good with it there too. So, but when we do a review, it's so nice to have that feedback when there's a bunch of people over in the panel here, especially if it's like two co-hosts and a guest. It is the magic number for sure. So this one. Well, one more. George has some old Monte Cristo Royal tubes that he wants to send us here at Stogie Geeks. They're in the original tubes. He actually got them in a box of 10, and he wants us to actually do a review of them. So I'll be sending him an address here for that, and we appreciate the opportunity. I've had a bunch of stuff. It's kind of like I have personally me. And I can only speak for myself here on the show. When cigars are either gifted to me, I usually put them in rotation. I like to get to them quicker than some of the other ones because I like to thank them quicker as well. But that's just me. And it's great because what I like about the emails that come in, and I'm going to tie this all up now. What I like about the emails that come in is especially the ones where some of the listeners just take a picture of a box and say, have you had this? Have you had this? Have you had that? What do you think? And it's amazing how geographically some of the cigars that are relevant in their geographical section might not be players within our section, and then vice versa. And that's what I like about the forum that we have here, where we're able to communicate with the Stogie Geeks listener. So that being said, any episode, if you have any question, please email joeh@stogiegeeks.com. If you want to speak to Paul, you can go paul@stogiegeeks.com, or Joe D. It's pretty simple, Joe D@stogiegeeks.com. Stay tuned. Next, we have my Stogies of the week, and then we have that interview. Stay tuned.
Duran Premium Cigars, one of the fastest growing boutique cigar companies, provides smokers a portal into the old Cuban tradition of the perfect balance and the lost art of progressive flavor construction. Roberto Pelayo Duran began his career in tobacco over 2 decades ago in Havana, where his reputation grew within Cuban circles. The creation of Duran Premium Cigars has given Roberto the platform to introduce a series of cigars that offer the quality and construction that he perfected while in Cuba. Brands include the ultra-premium Roberto P. Duran signature line, Azan, Nea, and Baracoa. Duran uses a seed-to-humidor approach, as all of their tobacco is grown in their farms and rolled in their factory in Esteli, Nicaragua. Rollers have been carefully chosen to carry out Roberto's precise method to ensure progressive flavor in each cigar. Duran Premium Cigars invites you to make their premium your standard.
Welcome back to Stogie Geeks, episode 255, volume 2. I am your host, Joe Hozempa, this week. We're about to do my Stogies of the week this week. I've had an interesting takeaway from my Stogies of the week, and we'll see if you notice the theme with some of the stuff that I have been smoking. By the way, all of the sticks are posted on StogieGeeks.com. Just click on the Stogies section, and away you go. You'll have the review, and you'll also have the opportunity if you want to comment, or if you just want to flash me an email. Email is joeh@StogieGeeks.com. You want to stay tuned also. The third section of this podcast, episode 255, is a phenomenal interview with Southern Draw Cigars, and we brought up a lot of good, valid points. So I'm going to blow through these sticks of the week. You're going to check out the interview, and hopefully we'll get your feedback, and thank you very much for listening to the Stogie Geeks podcast here. First cigar I had, it would not be a episode of Stogie Geeks Review of the Weeks unless I spoke about a Viaje. So I had a Viaje. It was the Viaje Exclusivo Reserva. The format I had, it's available in 2 different sizes, the Robusto and Toro. I've actually had both. So if you go to StogieGeeks.com, click on Stogies, and you notice that some of the availability, some of them are bold or unbold. The bold ones are the ones that I have had. So I've had the Viaje Exclusivo Reserva now in both sizes. The Robusto is available in 5x54. The Toro is 6x52. Wrapper, binder, filler are all Nicaraguan combinations. I like it. Strength in numbers, right? That being said, on my scale of 1 to 10, complexity, flavor, and balance, complexity, I did give it a 6. Flavor for the stick, I gave it a 7. In balance, I gave it a 7 there. The Viaje Exclusivo Reserva Toro starts out with a little blast of white pepper, then has some notes of natural tobacco that start to come into play, right? The last third, the natural tobacco notes tend to linger in the background. Then the pepper and sweetness just fade along throughout the stick. Now think about that, right? So you start this cigar, right? It's from Viaje. It's available in 2 different sizes. You get it, first of all, you light it up, you get a blast of white pepper. You're like, wow, sounds pretty good, right? Then I love the natural sweet tobacco taste there. It goes in through, and then the last, it just fades. It lingers a little bit, and the sweetness just fades. Doesn't fade to harshness. Doesn't fade. It just really just fades and just gets lighter and lighter. In my opinion, had these rest for a while. Over at least 6 months or so. In regards to our Stogie Geeks rating system, I gave him a 5 there. Sometimes you could tell, maybe, from my reviews, especially when I'm talking about complexity, flavor, and balance. Nothing wrong with the cigar. I just expected it to be from wrapper, binder, filler, all Nicaraguan. Expected it to have like a little bit more punch, and it didn't. But you do get that blast of white pepper, and then it just fades. Had the opportunity. I've been enjoying these thoroughly in first, and I never sat down and did a review for the Stogie Geeks website. So had the Christoph 685 Woodlawn. All right, 685 Woodlawn is available in one size. It's the Perfecto shape. It's a 6.5 by 60 ring gauge. Wrapper is a Brazilian wrapper. The binder is Nicaraguan. The filler is Nicaraguan with Dominican Habano. Complexity, flavor, and balance, I gave them all 7s. I thought it was a really enjoyable stick. The 685 Woodlawn is available in one single size. That's a Perfecto shape. Like I said, the cigar starts with a mix of wood and then some sweetness. Then has a little blast of what I consider white pepper. Not black pepper, not white pepper, light pepper. Little bit pepper. And then you have a natural tobacco flavor that really starts to surface. And then it kind of sticks really all through the end. And then right towards the end, it starts to kick in with the original sweetness and the light pepper that you had. And when I started thinking about this stick, and when I was reviewing it, it's really that Perfecto shape. It starts off, and then the center tends to be a little bit bigger, and then it fades back to the original. All of them have been consistent, very tasty, very natural tobacco flavor for there. And if you type it in, it's the Christoph 685 Woodlawn. We usually speak about that. I think Paul has reviewed it. I know Joe D has as well. In regards to the reviews on our Stogie Geeks rating, I gave it a 5. And the reason I gave it a 5 is because this is a limited production cigar, and it's usually only available for certain retail stores for whatever criteria that Christoph deems fit for that. So I really didn't want to send the Stogie Geeks listener on a wild goose chase, But if you actually come across these cigars, either online or if you come across them, you owe it to yourself to actually try them, especially because they're very different from some of the other Christophs that you might try. So that was one of my rationality. I try to when I give a Stogie Geeks review and a Stogie Geeks rating, I try to encompass everything: price component, availability, but boxes. If I think that you're going to enjoy the smoke. So that being said, that's my rating for that. That was the Christoph 685 Woodlawn. I got 3 more. 1, 2. Yep, I got 3 more I want to review. Another one, since we're on the topic of Christoph Corojo Limitada. This Corojo Limitada, the format that I had was a torpedo. That's 6 1/4 by 50. The wrapper is Nicaraguan Corojo Habano. The binder is a Nicaraguan Habano. And the filler is Nicaraguan Habano with Dominican Habano. It's available in 4 different sizes: Robusto, Torpedo, Matador, and Churchill. I've had 3 of the 4 different sizes. I had Churchill, Torpedo, and the Robusto size. Complexity, I gave it a 7. Flavor and balance, I gave it an 8. The most prominent notes in this cigar are cedar with some pepper. And, you can really pick up the cedar component in this cigar. So if you've had other Christophs and you want to revisit that, you're looking for a good cedar component, definitely pick up the Christoph Corojo Limitada. The profile carries on for the bulk of the cigar. That's one thing that I did notice about most of the Christophs that I smoke. They really tend to to not transition so much there, especially with the Corojo Limitada. I'm on a point where I'm going to try to review most of the Christophs myself for my reviewing. It's just a brand that I'm trying to get into over there. So I want you guys to share your experience. If you've had some Christophs and you want to point me in the direction, Joe H at StogieGeeks.com for sure. But like I said, the profile carries on that cedar with white pepper tends to carry on for most of the stick there. I started to get some leather components in the background there, but if you're a fan of Corojo cigars, you definitely got to try this stick for sure. That being said, with our Stogie Geeks rating system, I gave it a 5. Now, my next stick, I had the Gilberto Oliva I think it was last week or the week before that I reviewed it. And then now I found the Gilberto Oliva Reserva, which blend profile, it just has a Sumatra wrapper. So the size I had, well, I've had 3 sizes. I've had the Robusto, Toro, and the Torpedo size. All of them are listed on the Stogie Geek site. Click on Stogies. But in regards for the review, format I had was Toro. It's a 6 1/2 by 52. The wrapper is an Indonesian Sumatra. Say that 10 times, right? Indonesian Sumatra. Got it. The binder is from Ecuador. The filler is Nicaraguan. Complexity, flavor, and balance, I gave them all solid 8s for sure. This starts off with a woody mix of oak, cedar, and I was picking up a sweetness, and it was driving me nuts. Like I'm like, what is the sweetness component that I'm having? I couldn't define it. So I threw it into Google, and some of the other our counterparts who review sticks have actually said that the sweetness that they came up with was oranges, and I said to myself, that's it. That was the sweetness that I was getting. I couldn't place, like I was like, again, it was so, I was like, wow, this is a really, it was different. It was different than the other Gilberto Oliva that I had. But I was trying to nail it down. So I looked at a bunch of other ones and I was like, that was it. That being said, okay, since I was picking up the oranges, the profile advanced to a mixture. This is about halfway down. A mixture to some earthiness, some coffee, and a little bit of scotch of white pepper. Okay, you start to get this. Now the earthiness tends to be at the front of the profile, and then towards the end, it does start to get into like a little bit of a creamy note there. However, this is my note for this stick in my next review, and my point of reviewing these sticks is that I put note. This stick needs to be smoked slow, or it will seem harsh. So take time to enjoy. And I put that in my actual notes because last week I was introduced to the Sumatra wrapper for the Oliva Reserva, and I remember, we were smoking it. It was my first time smoking it. It wasn't for review. I was at a Christmas party, and I was like, oh wow, like it was okay. It was okay. And then I had another one, and at that time, I was a little bit more in a non-crazy Christmas shaking hands kind of moment, and I took time, and then over this weekend I really took time. So that was the 3 sizes that I had, and when I really took time to smoke it, I just began to pull out those nuances that I was describing previously there. So, something to think about, right? But that being said, if you smoke this cigar slow, right, which I know in theory all cigars should be smoked slow, but sometimes you get caught up in a social situation and you just happen to have a cigar in your hand, right? You're not really concentrating on it. Go back and revisit it, because on my next one I came up to the same conclusion. But with this here, the Gilberto Oliva Reserva, phenomenal price point, right? Since you got a good price point, and I did like the Reserva Blanc, I think it was good. It was a good stick as well. I put that review up. I gave it a box split with a friend, and interesting point, because if you smoke too fast, you might not take time to actually enjoy the stick. So with that being said, if you smoke it slow, check it out. Be a good box split with a friend. It won't break the bank either. So one more stick to review here, and this was the Matilda Quadrata. I hope that I am pronouncing that right. It is spelled Quadrata. Size I had, this was gifted to me by one of the reps, and I had an opportunity to smoke it. It's been sitting in my humidor for a little bit, but the format I had was a torpedo. That's a 6x52. The wrapper is an Ecuadorian Habano. The binder is from the Dominican Republic. The filler is Dominican Republic with some Nicaraguan in there, right? Complexity, I gave it a 7. Flavor, I gave it an 8. And balance, I gave it a 7. I enjoyed this stick. I had another size, so I also had it in the Robusto size. It's available in 3 different sizes: Toro, Torpedo, and the Robusto. When you start with this stick, you get a little bit of cocoa with a mild scotch of cedar, right? So let's think about that, right? You got a little bit of cocoa, you got some cedar. As you continue to smoke this, the sweetness fades. Doesn't fade quick, but it does fade. The retrohale on this stick is where it's at. Okay, my opinion. So if you retrohale, I was getting some pork and a little bit of meatiness. You start to get that thickness there. A little bit of bourbon oak for sure. Right off the back, you can toggle between both of those 2 flavors if you retrohale. And one of my side notes is you have to push this cigar. Okay, so what I mean by that is you really have to take your time with this cigar, as opposed to some of the other Matilda offerings, right? You got to take your time with this cigar. You got to push it. You gotta consider the retrohale. Consider smoking it slow. And I think that if you were to approach the cigar that way, it would be a much more enjoyable experience. My opinion. That being said, I did give it a 5-er, right? So that being said, I did give it a 5-er, and you definitely should check that out. And the last notes I want to make in regards to the Sticks of the Week section here is that I've learned something this week when I did my Sticks of the Week, is that sometimes taking it a little bit slower and pushing the cigar and trying to, dig deep to find out what it's offering you could really change your perspective. That's my lesson for today. Anyway, stay tuned. Volume 3, we got an awesome interview with Southern Draw Cigars. We'll see you next week. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 255 of Stogie Geeks. I am your host this week, Joe Hozempa, of course with Joe D. Always a pleasure. Right now we are doing Southern Draw, Jacob's Ladder. You should definitely check out this smoke. He's got some good stuff going on. We have live in studio Chief Evangelist Robert Holt from Southern Draw Cigars. How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for the invite. It's going to be a good time.
It is going to be a good time. This music's pumping me up, man. I'm like ready to get going. There we go. I appreciate. Welcome to the show. This is episode volume 3 of episode 255 of Stogie Geeks. I'm your host this week, Joe Hozempa. Always a privilege and an honor to be sitting in this chair. Thank you, Paul, for the opportunity. Joe D, co-hosting, doing a great job.
Happy to be here, man.
It's a good time. And we have live in studio Chief Evangelist of Southern Draw Cigars, Robert Holt, who had traveled from Texas all the way to come here. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Texas. I've never been. Always wanted to been. I've done some business in Texas personally. I've always heard everything's bigger in Texas. The drinks are bigger. The boots are bigger. The people are bigger.
The booties are bigger. We like groceries. We like groceries down there. Hey, listen, an hour ago I did a temperature check. It's colder in Austin, Texas than it is right here in Rhode Island right now.
Really?
It's amazing.
I'm not surprised, but, that will change really quick. If your interview was in January here, it'd be like 20 and 19.
Nice.
The wind would be ripping. People can't drive. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, well, they can't drive in Texas either. So
oh, really?
You get a little ice on the road, and it's kind of comical. You just sit back with a camera and a cigar, let them do the driving.
You let them do the driving, yeah, for sure. Well, you have taken time out of your busy schedule. Thank you for that. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Here in studio. Very excited. We are smoking the Jacob's Ladder. And want you to, if you could tell us about that blend, tell us about Southern Draw, tell us how you got in the beginning, how you entered the business. And I do want to make note, first of all, a thank you for your service. It's a veteran-owned business.
Pleasure. Thank you.
My father is retired Navy. You know, I know what it's like for families out there, for sacrifice that not only you have went through, but sacrifices that the families go through as well. So thank you for your service for that. And then any Stogie Geeks listener out there who is of a veteran or who is in service, thank you very much for your service.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And I'll say, first of all, Joe, thanks for the invite and being flexible with your schedule. Always exciting. Good to be out with Big Joe D next to me here, doing a great job. You know, spending time with Southern Draw and establishing opportunities for us to be here and do the events. But you made a key point a moment ago about military service, and as a prior service member, that's important, and we thank you for even acknowledging it. But the key point I picked up on that is the families. You know, the families also have to serve, and the families have to commit. And a lot of times, if it's a father that's deployed in the service, the mother has to run the household, and vice versa nowadays, you know, with even more service women with us. So it's important that the families get acknowledged for their sacrifices as well, equally as much. Some challenges through life, and then when we come back, we're not always of the best mindset, right? So it is important to acknowledge that, because I think the families welcoming us back, especially from deployed status, is important, and the community embracing it, and ultimately that's really what led to the cigar that's in our hand. This is a little bit of, you know, quality of life, a little bit of peace, a little bit of a reward, I think, as frequently as we do it, or as infrequently for some people. But this is a great vehicle, I think, to enjoy, which is really what led us to this chair today for Southern Draw.
Sure.
Yeah, I definitely do want to hear the story, but yeah, I've never really looked at it that way with the families until I'm sure you have been present with a retirement ceremony.
Absolutely.
And I mean, you want to. I mean, it's like a funeral. You know what I mean? Like, because that person's identity, that person's identity is really is their service, and then now they're entering another chapter within their life, and the families have also paid the sacrifice. And I remember when my dad retired in the Navy, they had a ceremony within the ceremony for us, the family. So my little brother got up there, I got up there, my mom got up there, and they did a little thing for us too. And then ever since that moment, you know, he retired 12 years ago, and ever since that moment, I've always acknowledged the person and the family. So it was one of those pivoting moments that moved me. You know, and for those in the know,
It resonates,
you know,
well.
it's just one of those things. So let's get to a better tone.
That's a good step.
All right, absolutely.
Let's talk how you made the transition from being in the military to like you already started to elaborate. You know, I truly believe that when someone has the opportunity to smoke premium tobacco, especially premium cigars, that they owe it for themselves to take a break from whatever their definition of life is, or whatever their definition of craziness is. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And for me, it's been such an industry that was introduced to me, and it's just fascinating to just hear the stories, to be with the people, and you know, now like from speaking with Joe D pre-Stogie Geeks, you know, him and I have this opportunity to now share this on a weekly basis with a bunch of listeners. I mean, it's really the best of both worlds, you know, because we get to speak to the actual players.
Absolutely.
You know, and then we try our hardest as co-hosts to articulate that to our audience, you know. But let's talk about your little slice of heaven over here.
Sure. And I say it wasn't an immediate transition from my military service. I've been out of the military for 20 years now. And I served in the Army, and a good point is Southern Draw is not just Robert Holt and Sharon Holt. It's necessary to acknowledge, since your father's retired Navy, the first partner that was brought into this business with us, although very humble and quiet, out of California, the Hogan family, Phil and Shelley Hogan. I want to give a shout out to them because they're as part of Southern Draw as I am, and Phil is also retired Navy, a true gentleman, someone that really enjoys the same passions I have, which we'll talk about in a moment, with cigars and fishing and outdoors, and he's a much better golfer than I am, but we won't get into that. But I had a 15-year period after my military service that I spent in the wireless industry, wireless telephone industry, and basically, that took me around the world. It took me around the world even more than the military did. But 8 years I spent in the Caribbean, Latin America, Central America. And these are developing countries. Some people say third world. I certainly say developing countries. Maybe don't have the resources and assets at that point, primarily communication. So I tell you, some very hardworking people. There's probably not a country in Central South America and the Caribbean I haven't been in and spent a lot of time in. And what I found myself doing is these are families that get up with the sun and work. And as the sun gets ready to go down, they quit working. And what I found is we all got together for a cigar at the end of the day. And this was some advice that was given by a very famous tobacconist that has since passed on, and I don't want to take thunder from everybody that knew him, so I won't mention him by name, but he gave me some advice once. He said, at the end of the day, the reason why I stop and have a cigar is, he goes, I live by two principles that work for me. And he goes, this is an old man talking to, at that point, maybe I was much younger than I am now, right? But he says, you never take work home and you never take home to work. And it's a very simple concept. But his point was, at the end of a work day, when traffic is busy and you're still stressed out from work, if you just take the time, whether it's by yourself or with a couple of buddies, and have a cigar, he said, let traffic go by. And traffic in Jamaica or traffic in Barbados or traffic in Cuba was horse-drawn carts and taxis and motorcycles and bicycles. It's pretty simple. For us, it's yellow taxis and stoplights, right? But his point was, I got to take it down a little bit, enjoy a cigar, maybe have one drink, which is what we're doing. Here's to you. Have a drink, relax for just a minute, Let the stress come down. And then when you go home, be with your family, have a nice dinner. Everything's back on even keel, right? And then when you start the next day and you kiss the babies goodbye and you kiss the wife, you get ready to go to work. I also wake up in the morning with a cup of coffee and have a cigar. It gets the day started. It's about accomplishing a mission. It's about setting the tone for the day. And if you set the tone in a relaxed atmosphere and something that you enjoy, I personally like to do a little Bible study. Some people just like to clear their head. Some people listen to music. But I think that was a nice life lesson for me. So what happened in that 8 years was daily basis. I would travel between Miami and Fort Lauderdale to fly to each of these countries to work on these wireless networks with the government agencies. And what happened is I started submitting myself to the culture in South Florida and visiting all the cigar shops and, eating nice Cuban food.
There's plenty along the way from Fort Lauderdale to Miami.
Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it beautiful? But that was the tip of the iceberg. And what happened is we're working on these cell towers throughout, and we had a lot of Dominican families and a lot of even Cuban families, Honduran, Costa Rican, Ecuadorian, and they all came from families that had a history in tobacco. And over the 8 years, it was, Mr. Robert, you sure smoke a lot of cigars. I would like you to meet my uncle or my grandfather or my cousin. They have tobacco farms. And as I went to these countries, I got to go into the farms as just a family friend. And I got to ask questions. I got to watch a passion. I got to watch an art form is what I would describe it as now, right? And that allowed me to go to basically all the tobacco growing regions, to visit most or all of the families and the factories and the farms. And then at the end of the day, we got to sit back and go, we get to smoke this cigar. It's more than enjoyable because now you see the passion. But what struck me was we grew up relatively poor, a lot of brothers and sisters, and we didn't have much. And I'm not saying this so my parents feel like they didn't provide enough, because they did.
Sure.
But we didn't have much, and we're not much different than a lot of people in our community. But as I grew in the wireless industry, I did have some wealth and some successes, and that was wonderful. And maybe it wasn't the best thing for us, for our family. It not only took me away, but it made us not need other people in our lives, in a sense that we had money, we had nice houses and boats and cars, and lived the fast life that we were good people. We felt like we were good, but there definitely wasn't a humility there. So let's go back to what happened with Southern Draw. We had some bad things happen financially in the wireless industry with some of our international business, and literally woke up one day and everything was gone. Yep. And some of the friends and family that I'll talk about that are part of Southern Draw were part of that as well, so they had loss as well. But it came when I came back. Of course, smoking a cigar was always important to me. My wife said, "Let's do something together. Let's do something that you're passionate about." And I'm really only passionate about three things. I mean, really passionate.
Yep.
And one of them is fishing. Okay. I couldn't find anybody to pay me to go fishing. You know, one thing is sex. I'm not good at that. Nobody's going to pay me for that. And the third thing was cigars.
Okay, you got like it.
And she said, I kind of like what you've learned, some of the concepts for a brand. And I literally sat down with a couple of buddies and I drew the logo that's on Joe's shirt, the Southern Draw logo, on the back of a beer napkin at a little golf course in Austin, Texas. And I said, if we ever had a cigar brand, it would be Southern Draw, but because that's a term for people that talk slow in the South, but drop the L. Southern meaning faith, family, hospitality.
Yep.
Meaning inclusive of everyone. Women, men, old, young, new generations, whether they like flavored infused cigars or not. The bottom line is there's a passion. And two was really focus on, as an engineer, focus on the science of the cigar. There's great tradition. There's great culture throughout the tobacco growing regions and producing regions, specifically Cuba and Dominican Republic and Honduras and Nicaragua, of course. We wanted to really look at how do we create a sustainable, consistent set of blends that we could grow with. So, you know, Southern Draw was really created in that concept of wanting to do something with our family, people that we trusted, that trusted us. And then the most important aspect, Joe, was this. What we found at all those travels and all those little villages and towns and farms was when you write a check as a brand owner, and you have your partners, you know where every one of those pennies go, whether it's to the people that are working the nurseries, that are plowing the fields, that are planting the tobacco, that are priming the tobacco, that are managing or hand building the barns in which to cure the tobacco.
Which is not easy.
It's not. This you know, it's been said that it takes 300 hands from a seed to a cigar, and we're starting to see more about it. But if you can provide in some way a little something for every one of those people in the process, it really makes this sweeter, I think.
Yeah.
So this just kind of started as a mission to do good for people and to be accountable ourselves and be able to kind of share our story and our faith and our family and do it with people that we felt like we trusted and that trusted us. And it has basically erupted into what we have Southern Draw. And yes, we're relatively small, but we're much larger than we were 3 or 4 years ago,
Absolutely.
right?
That's actually a good perspective. You know, you can say, okay, yeah, sure. You know, I have a smaller market share, but you know something? You're in the mix.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And when people try your cigars, they're in the mix, especially if they like a certain profile. And we'll get to some of the profiles.
Sure.
You know, but you know, it's great that you seem to be the type of person who doesn't forget about the people who have carried you to how you started your business.
Absolutely.
You know,
we don't forget, and I would have to admit that I never forgot even during the good times.
Yep.
But I don't think I ever let them know, and I don't know that the decisions I made were to the benefit of everyone that it should have been. It was always about stockholders and shareholders, right? It's a different animal, and God bless the people that are in corporate America and the world and really benefit and have great wealth. But the great wealth for us was the worst thing that could have happened.
Yep.
Our family was pulled apart, and this is the glue. The cigar is the vehicle that put us all back together and put us on track to being better people and more accountable people. And I think that's just a life lesson.
Yeah, and also, just as someone from the outside observing your story, this is a very provocative statement to say on Stogie Geeks, but I do have a reputation. So, you know, it's not like you're old money when it comes to cigars. So what I mean by that is it's not like your father or your grandfather rolled cigars for 45 years, 50 years, and said, hey, you want that Southern Draw company here? We can make that happen.
Sure.
Which, I mean, I could start rattling off 20, 30 names, no question. You know, I see them every day, either in my travels. Joe D sees them every day. You had started from something that you were passionate about, and you have crossed the hurdles from a business perspective to reach that barrier to entry. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And then now you're a player in the game. I mean, you've been to IPCPR. Right?
We have.
So you because I remember from your Facebook post you have a presence at IPCPR.
I think those blue collar, humble beginnings, absolutely resonate well with the cigar fans and the public that are out there, and that that's one of those things that draw people, and it certainly drew me in. That was a big motivating factor.
Yeah,
for myself.
well, I think true cigar fans have a pivotal movement, a pivotal movement, at least in their mind, where they say, hey, you know, I'm passionate about this. Maybe I should open up a retail shop. Maybe I should, you know, maybe I should start a blend, or I would love to become a rep and go on the road, or whatever aspect that they want to enter the industry.
Right.
And it tells you, because I can tell you that from my experience, you know, I'm in the same boat. When I bought a retail shop at 20 years old in the Providence Metro, my parents were like, "What are you doing?" You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? You know what
passion
I mean?
certainly has to be the key
and,
motivator.
And you can have a cigar shop on Wickeden Street in Providence. Like, it's not like it was tucked in like a suburb or a little thing. Like, you're paying this premium rent, doing this thing you want. And I says, you know, I want to build something. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I want to build something. I want to construct business. I want to bring it to the next level. You know, all pre-internet days, different world from a retail perspective.
Absolutely.
There, when I say pre-internet, you know, it was 96 through 2001.
Right.
So,
And the only real distribution methodology was the actual brick and mortar. There was no
Right.
other outlet to
Right.
to sell and to reach audiences. Right.
Like,
Absolutely.
you went to the brick and mortar to get the deal. You would never seek
Right.
the internet
Right.
at that time frame to get the actual deal. So
Right.
so you have one of those challenges. But so I love the way that it's a very inspiring story. How, you know, like I said before, you found something with your partner and your wife to do something that you're passionate about, and to bring it to this level. And you've been on the market for what, 3 years off the top of my head?
This is year 4
Okay,
on the
so
retail
it's year
side.
4, yeah.
Correct. And you know,
How's that going?
You know, I think it's better than we deserve, to use a term that other people have used before me. But again, we just believe that we've got to put the work in. We've got to do the heavy lifting. But as you referenced a moment ago, we don't have a pedigree. We don't have lineage. But that's not to say that we haven't been blessed with pedigrees and lineages, because we have.
Right.
Most people know that every cigar that has a Southern Draw band on it is produced at the A.J. Fernandez factory. It's not to use A.J.'s name. It's to say thank you when I reference him as a mentor, as a good partner, as family. But there's many people in this industry that have come before us that are third or fourth or fifth generation that have stepped in and said, let me put an arm around you. Let me see what you're doing. If you need advice, ask us. Let me show you how our inventory systems work. I'm a business guy, right? But the cigar industry is totally different than anything I've ever seen. So it doesn't matter how smart or MBAs or how educated I am. Really, this is street knowledge. This is hard-earned blood, sweat, and tears that have been offered to us by some of the largest brands and even the smallest brands. And on the road, people hear me reference some of those people. And obviously, AJ's one of those, but and only one of them. But all their years of knowledge and culture and tradition has been shared with us. Like we go to Star Wars, new movies coming out in a couple of weeks, right? So as a Padawan learner, you know, I get this knowledge and I get this lightsaber and I get to see what I can do with it. But it's really their knowledge and passion that's been shared that's offered us this opportunity. So we feel blessed in that sense. The humility of it is realizing how much goes into creating and producing a consistent premium cigar. Not just Southern Draw, but any. We do believe that our blends for us are special and unique, and it's what we do that makes us a little bit different. But the message to us is far more important to our brand and our growth of our brand and how we support our brand. But you also find that those people that I referenced that have supported us and helped us through this early stages, we smoke a lot of their cigars. We promote their cigars. We thank them publicly a lot because I think it's important to remind us how come we're here, how blessed we are, which is the grace of God and all these good people that have helped us out.
What can't be lost in the shuffle is you were also receptive to that help, you know, which speaks volumes too, you know, and it seemed like in big time anybody, and you're, you know, receptive to the help and reached out, and I think that resonates well again, you know, not just the consumer standpoint, but also in the business. You know.
Thanks, Joe.
You have a question for Joe? I mean, for you are Joe.
Yeah.
I have a, let me be candid.
Today,
right?
anyway, yeah.
If I start slurring, right, we're going to get to the blend. This is a full body, strong.
I've had the
cigar,
luxury. This is my second
right?
one for the day of the Jacob's Ladder.
I've had this cigar when Joe D introduced this to me, and he's like, you know, and he's like, what do you think? I'm like, dude, that thing is like a spice bomb. Like,
Beast, right.
and not too many cigars that have me that are right in your face for that spice, you know.
Right.
And not only that, like you don't even have to drink. It really would start to make you like not loopy, but loopy. You know what I mean? Like it really lets you know.
Could have a little something in the tank, get that base coat going. So
It's a strong cigar.
Yeah.
Like when I knew I was doing this interview, I mean, I ate a little extra heavy, you know, and I heard that you were enjoying some of the food here in Rhode Island, and I'm sure you ate too. But so if I start to slur, it's crazy. I dig this, and your Rose of Sharon, as well. Totally opposite sides of the spectrum, of course.
Absolutely, it is.
Which we'll get to your methodology in that
Right.
and placement. But do you have a question, Joe? Do you have a question, Joe, for Rob?
At this point in time, no. I'm really digging I'm getting lost in the cigar, man. To be honest with you, that's where I'm.
So see, I'm trying to get lost in the cigar and host the show.
It makes it difficult.
Which with this cigar, it's pretty hard. You know, the Rose of Sharon, I could probably do it. There's no question.
Right. No,
You know?
sometimes we got to take the camera. We'll pan to the left here for you.
Then to top it off with this excellent choice, the pairings. What are we drinking? The Jeffersons.
Jefferson's.
Yeah, Jefferson. It's just a great pairing. So.
That'll give you a good balance. You'll be able to hang in for quite a while with as long as you keep imbibing there, it'll be okay.
It's a solid dessert after a good meal.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good. No, it's in this blend. You know, obviously it is our fullest bodied. It is a Lancaster 401 Pennsylvania broadleaf, and as you can tell by the appearance, it is very aggressively fermented. The AJ Fernandez factory has really executed the strategy to almost perfection for us. That doesn't mean it's a perfect cigar, but for us, we've coaxed as much flavor and consistency out of that cigar I think that those tobaccos could ever possibly be. We're very proud of it and excited that people have enjoyed it. You know, we're small, so every time we release a new blend, we feel like the whole world's on our shoulders, that it could all go away, you know, Atlas, and I could drop it, and, you know, we're only as good as the last thing we did. And when this was released at the show, it was with great caution because how many people really enjoy only full-bodied, full-flavored, as you say, spice bombs. But this is a Pennsylvania broadleaf. It's actually a double Maduro, but it's also a double Lajero. So in this blend, we actually have 25% Esteli Lajero, which is where a little more of that spice is coming from. But the other Lajero leaf is Jalapa. It has a natural sweetness, almost like a sorghum or molasses. And that's intentional in a sense that if we just wanted pure power, we probably would have gone, the second Lajero would have been a Piloto Cubano or an extra Esteli Lajero, with more power.
Sounds like you got some more sticks coming out.
We always have more sticks coming out. But in this case, we want it to be more meaty and smoky, and it is bold, but that little natural sweetness it makes it approachable for most people. And I've had people that smoke Connecticut's that have picked this cigar up and said, I'll smoke it. I know it's strong. Just make sure you eat a bowl of chili, a rack of ribs, you know, a steak like Joe did today. I only had a lobster. I had a steamed lobster and vegetables, you know, but it's right there. As long as you have a little something in the tank, you really are good. But, you know, the Jacob's Ladder for us, you know, it is obviously in honor of my son, who's Ethan Jacob. Okay. Which, much like this cigar, is at 17, a big, strong, bold kid, but he has this natural sweetness and this great demeanor that's much like his mom. And we really, when working on the blend and smoking through it, I was like, it couldn't have reflected his personality any better, because it really can knock you on your butt if it wants to, but
Sounds
it's got
like
that
a strong
sweetness,
kid.
you know. Yeah, he's a big, strong kid, you know, but really he's a sweet kid, and he's got a good soul to him, and I believe this cigar has a good soul to it, you know. And I think it's you know, we released the Robusto, Toro, and Gordo to begin with at the show. The reception has been, again, better than we deserve. This week we started our second release of this cigar, which will take us through the holidays, and then there'll be some exciting things coming out for 2018 that involve this blend and other line extensions. It's going to be, I think, pretty exciting leading up into IPCPR.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a business question. Having any lineage from parental advisory, when you decide to give a release, how many do you know how to make? So like you said, you've had your first release. Sure. Now you have your second release. So what was the first release, numbers-wise?
On this cigar, right about 100,000.
Okay, so you had 100,000 cigars.
Yeah.
Then now you're into your second 100,000 cigars.
That's correct.
Right?
That's correct.
So like, where does that number come from? Like, put us into some perspective of
Absolutely.
that. Because you have some smaller lines, like the kudzu, And what's the other smaller one? There's
The
Quick draw line.
the
quick
quick
draw.
draw. So you have smaller. So were those released in the same numbers or?
Panatella and Petit Corona,
Okay.
Buffalo, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut.
Excellent question. And this goes back to our origin of this business. This business, unfortunately for us, was planned with an engineering mind. I'm all about numbers. Numbers don't lie.
Sure.
So part of our goal was to never have a cigar that dominates our sales across the board. We wanted to have an average sell of every SKU that was on the market. So when we began this, it started with the kudzu and the firethorn.
Yep.
And we'll talk about those blends a little later, but that's that medium to full-bodied oscuro with the and a medium plus bodied rosado cigar. And it was because I didn't want to start this brand by saying, here's a Connecticut, here's a Habano, here's a Maduro. Didn't want to do it. We've seen it enough. It's great.
Well, that's what the lineage does.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But we didn't want to do it.
You know.
So we did release a Habano, but it was Habano Rosado, something very special, something very finicky, something very difficult to work with that takes a lot of time, that has incredible flavor.
The Mexican San Andreas binder,
which was a unique approach, I think, right?
Yep.
But we set the annual production numbers before we ever started the business for every SKU. We also set the release dates. So in the core line, as we mentioned, it's Rose of Sharon, Firethorn, Kudzu, and now the Jacob's Ladder. The first release is always Robusto Toro Gordo because our 8 years worth of studies said that those will be the top selling cigars for us in these blends in the United States.
That's what the market dictates.
We had to do it, right?
Yep.
But I'm a lover of classic sizes. I'm a lover of small ring gauge, traditional Cuban size cigars, 50 or less. So the quick draw line was quickly introduced after that, and that started with just the Petit Corona, which is a 4.5 44. But that quick draw line in the three blends was really meant to be a $5 to $6 price point, a 30 to 40 minute cigar for most people, and we expanded that line into that short Panatella, 5.5 by 40, and most of the customers in the market that's followed us in the last 2 weeks realize we just released a Petit Corona, a nice traditional 5 by 46, and that same $6 price point. So we set these release dates well in advance, and usually right about 6 months after, give or take, a few weeks depending on the big events or shows that's coming up, we release the fourth Vitola in a core line, which is Lanceros. And our Lanceros are always 6.5 by 40. They burn better for us, they draw better for us, and you're getting the same amount of tobacco as that classic 7 and a third, by 38. But we like the 6.5 40 for our blends. So the Kudzu and the Firethorn Lancero have been out for a couple of years. They've sold very well, even in markets that don't traditionally sell Lanceros. So then it goes back to a little bit more strategy. We try to have all of our core blends. If it's a Robusto, we try to price them equally. If it's a Toro, we try to, no matter if it's Connecticut or the Jacob's Ladder. When we send it to the retailers, we try to sell it at the same point because we want them on the shelves to not cannibalize themselves within the brand.
Right.
So, and that's a kind of a unique approach, I think, and it doesn't always get executed at the retail level because their mind says this double broadleaf, double Lajero should be more.
Right.
But it's not more from us. And the same with the quick draw line. We try to keep the pricing uniform. And then what's happened to date, we've been very lucky that every cigar we've made sells exactly the same amount in the market. Even though this seems really hot and the media is on it and everybody's after it, we didn't release more than we released of the Kudzu or the Firethorn or the Rose of Sharon. We release the same amount every time we produce. When we do a new release, it's always the same number.
It's just some had a different head start.
That's right.
From when they started, and then they kind of eased into the markets.
That's
interesting approach.
That's right.
It's an interesting approach, and I bet you that there are probably some listeners at the high level corporate who are looking at this podcast and looking at this podcast for consideration for 2018 and for 2019 and saying, that's different because others just release it.
Right.
Because that's how they've done it for 40 years, 50 years.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, please, Joe. Please.
I was just gonna drop in. We spoke many times about you and I personally love the Lancero, but up in this neck of the woods here, certainly needs maybe a little more education from shows like this, reps, the storefront too. That these particular Lanceros, smoke like a champ. They're incredible, and some future releases down the road as well. Tie it all tie it all in together. But
well, I think Lanceros in general here in the Northeast do not get their credit that they
they'll
deserve.
get that just due for sure.
And the reason being, I think, honestly, it's the smoking patterns of the participant. In other words, if they're outside on their deck and they only smoke outside on their deck, or they only smoke outside, then here it's just like golf or fishing. You know, like if I golf once, I golf twice in November. If I golf once in December, I'm lucky. Once in January, I'm lucky. Same thing with February, March. So if you were to compare that to, say, I only had a cigar on the golf course as opposed to someone on the deck, it would be the same thing. I would not have a Lancero. But a Lancero requires the participant to not go fishing, right? Just from portability standpoint. You know, a Robusto or a Toro or Gordo would allow you to go fishing.
Yeah, it's a little harder.
Same thing with golf. It's a little bit more durable. But all blends in the Lancero, if you're into premium cigars and you see a Lancero on the shelf and you like that blend, you owe it to yourself to sit in the shop or sit in your garage or whatever indoor setting.
Champion of flavor.
With this and just savor the flavor, because it just adds to it. And it's amazing how many Lanceros just don't do well in the Northeast. So let me ask you this question. You who have experience outside of the Northeast, how do Lanceros, typically do?
And I'll say uniformly across the United States, with the exception of one or two very select shops that specialize in having a great selection of Lanceros, Stogie Cigars in Houston, for example, they don't do well as a whole. It's not your moneymaker. But what we've also found is, by bringing a Lancero in that's a little heavier, on the ring gauge and a little more resilient, whether it's breezy or windy or rainy or whatever it may be, it's not so delicate. It's worked well for us. But the most important thing we did based on this observation is, if Robert wants to smoke them, I've got to make them and sell them, right? So I can have a sample. So we priced it at the Robusto price, because we always found that the perception that you just lined out was core, but Lanceros cost more to make.
Yep.
They're very sophisticated. So if you got a $10 Robusto, you might have a $12 or $13 Lancero. Yep. So we just made a conscious decision early on, says our Lanceros will always be priced the same as our Robusto. And I think for us that's worked. So our challenge after this discussion will be on the next release of Lanceros to get some here with you guys to smoke and enjoy and share. And what you'll find is, challenge your listeners and watchers, challenge them to take a little 45-minute to an hour break. And if they're not mowing the grass or fishing or golfing, which there won't be in the wintertime, try to enjoy the Lancero and see if they enjoy the flavor profiles and the sophistication that size and that size alone can really offer them. Absolutely. Because if you love cigars, you're gonna love that like it's a friggin' double cut pork chop. You know what I mean? It's just a beautiful cigar that needs to be brought back, and it needs to be brought back into the fold of people's rotation. Every 4 or 5 cigars, to have a Lancero is something special.
Once you get into it, you can't help but continue that. You're jonesing for it. You got a hankering for that Lancero, and you owe it to yourself to to really dive into the flavor and enjoy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
See me when I judge a cigar, either for Stogie Geeks or for myself, I like the meatiness. I like the leather component. I like the sweetness. I like the strong sweetness. I like the strong sweetness that this has. My question to you is, would you ever put that in the smaller sizes, the Jacob's Ladder, like the regular ones? Because I'm kind of intrigued. You know what I mean? Like thinking like, wow, if they could harness that meatiness in, I mean, this is not a terribly, it's not a big size,
right?
But what I did like about the quick draw series is there are moments when you only have your 40 minutes.
Absolutely.
And when you buy what are they available, 5 packs or whatever?
No, individually, some shops have the packs.
Okay, yeah. So some of the shops here in the Northeast had packs. So those are a good entry level, number one, to the product. And then number 2, to not have, you don't need 2 hours to smoke a quick draw.
Absolutely. It's economical. It gives you a good premium cigar for the amount of time that you have without having to put it down.
So are you putting this in the quick draw or no?
But
No.
let me so let me answer
He's like,
your
no way,
question.
man. I want to make money. No.
It has nothing to do with that, because the quick draw blends, for example, the broadleaf is a more expensive cigar to roll than that one.
Really?
It's
Okay.
a very expensive tobacco, but it was intended to be $5 to $6. So here's the long answer to the question. This cigar that you're smoking has pre-August 8, 2016 production of Robusto Toro Gordo, Lancero, 6x56 Perfecto, 5x58 Perfecto, those are unique, and a Bellicoso Fino. Depending on what happens with the FDA, what happens over the next couple of years, if we have the right to go back and add any new sizes or any new releases, I would absolutely love all of our core lines to be brought back in those classic smaller sizes, without question.
Yeah, smart move, yeah.
The Panatellas and maybe more importantly, that cigar and a Corona Gordo, like the 546 we just relieved, and maybe after the show we'll just run downstairs and grab one, because the 546 and the Pennsylvania Quick Draw and the Dark Habano was absolutely phenomenal. It's got the body of a full size cigar. It's got a nice spice. It's got a nice meatiness to it, as you said. But they smoke so much differently in the new format. But depending on what happens with the FDA, we'll certainly explore bringing in smaller ring gauge sizes, because ultimately that's what I love the most. But as of December 2018, at the end of this month, we'll have 15 different cigars on the market that are 40 to 46 ring gauge. So we do have quite a few if you look at the line. And as we add the Rosa Sharon Lancero that most people already know, if they follow us, it's coming. The announcement's coming in the next week or two of who's going to have them first, and we're going to really make sure our best shops and our best partners have those first. But look forward to that coming out in the Lancero next year, and I think it's going to be something real special.
Wait too long to order, because they're going to go. They're going to go
There
fast.
will be some Rhode Island shops on that list, I'm assuming.
Well, if not, we'll sit here and smoke them. You know, we don't have to have a shop to smoke, do we? Yeah, absolutely.
Works for me, but you know,
Yeah.
for the local listeners, maybe not.
Yeah.
But.
No, I absolutely. You know, and since you brought that up, over the last 3 years, one of the best markets for Southern Draw has been West Virginia. We're in every store. They've been behind us. Their families have been behind us. We visit them quite frequently. Why? Because we felt welcome. We felt invited. We felt like they were as hospitable as any people we had ever been with. And they have this place called Tudor's Biscuit World, where you can get all-you-can-eat biscuits and gravy, and the biscuits are like this big. So that's a reason enough to go. But what's happened here with Joe over the last 3 or 4 months is this Joe is introducing them to Rhode Island and now into New Hampshire and Massachusetts. It's given us the opportunity to be here together today.
Yeah.
And what we're finding is, thus far, it's been very hospitable, very warm and welcoming, even for a brand called Southern Draw.
Sure.
And it seems like they're willing to explore and try new things and maybe support them. And we're not asking them to be only Southern Draw loyal. We're just asking them to try it.
Yep.
And we think you'll appreciate one or more of the blends and sizes, and try to put them in your rotation. And let us visit more and spend more time doing these events. So the bottom line is, I think you'll see this this next year that Southern Draw will be back in the market at least 3 or 4 times. And hopefully my boss lady, the Rosa Sharon, will be able to make it too, because she'll enjoy it. I love seafood. I love the ocean. I love the salty air. Even though it's kind of chilly out by the beach today, and we sat out and smoked a cigar with my fingers numb as they could be. But the answer is, they're going to be here. I'm pretty certain we're going to be here for a long time in this market.
Nice. Only going to rope them in summertime down here. It's nothing like it.
When you started the business, did you know any of the talks of the FDA? Like,
Yeah.
Did you know?
You know, I did.
Okay,
I
so
did.
because there are a lot of veteran cigar people who we interview. And if we were having this conversation a year ago, it was predicate date. We don't know.
Sure.
I have always took the stance, either on my cigar radio show, which was 3 years old, and then or over the past this calendar year as a co-host of Stogie Geeks. I've always taken the stance with the FDA on record that once they really get to the diagnosis of what premium cigars are, we're going to be passed with a longer predicate date. You know what I mean?
I don't disagree.
So I really and I've had veterans. I can name real names of some people, some players who looked at me and they were just like, "You are out of your mind." Like that was their exact quote to me, and I says, "No, listen, you don't understand. You don't think that those guys on the hill, any hill, local or
Right.
federal, right?" Those guys are participating, number one, in premium cigars. That's number one. Number two, they're trying to lump it in because of another craze that's coming in.
Sure.
And an older craze. So I'm talking about vape coming in, or the pipe tobacco coming in. And you don't think that for a minute that they're going to look at just the tax revenue? Because they're all heavily taxed throughout all the 50 states. They're all differently taxed. Some of them, like Connecticut and Rhode Island, have the same tobacco tax laws.
Right.
But the bordering state, Massachusetts, so if you're a small state like ours, which you can probably fit like 10 Rhode Islands in Texas, right? Or
Maybe more.
It's probably more, right?
Yeah.
But when you take it like that, like a bordering state, like that's a real big factor. And then so for you as the manufacturer, you have to take that into some consideration too. So you knew about the FDA potentially coming down on premium tobacco.
I could jump in quick, just 1 second. Not to feather the nest, but
feather the nest.
Do it.
What I've enjoyed, tracking Southern Draw for since the beginning here is, Southern Draw has always been first and foremost, with the media, with podcasts like this, getting the information out. You heard it here first. It was front and center with all the regulation, where you stand, coming down the pike. There's no hidden mysteries, just an honest take, and I think that resonates well again with the consumer. They know they see what's coming. The brand is committed, and sustainability, sure.
Yeah, it may hamper our future, and we'll talk a little bit about it. But to Joe's first point, I understand some of the larger manufacturers and people who have been in the industry a long time being a little skeptical about your optimism, right?
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that's what they've been trained to do. And what you're saying would require the FDA to have some logical sense, whether it's scientific or financial or a combination of both. My prayers are that at someday the predicate date will move, and maybe that August 8, 2016 will be that date. And that might be the best of both worlds. Do we want it totally exempt? Hey, I'm not going to speak for everybody, but at this point, we have risked everything. Our family and our friends have risked everything to make sure, and I'll tell you a little bit of the details here in a minute. Since we're on the show, Joe asked me to do it, and I'll share what we did in hopes and prayers, but we don't want it totally exempted. We want it to have logic, and maybe that's too much to ask, but economical and scientific logic makes sense to me, because there's never been a study that I'm aware of that talks about the benefits of cigar smoking, that talks a lot about the psychological or physiological. As a disabled vet myself and many others, and I'm not talking about just veterans, I'm talking about people in life. We can go to states now that have legalized marijuana to deal with all kinds of medical problems, and we can go to Colorado where marijuana tax is 25%. And last year they tried to increase the cigar tax to 72% in the state with a 25% cap on marijuana. And I thought, what a country, We got to keep fighting. And it shows like this, and the members of the media that really look at this on a factual basis, we got to keep fighting it, keep educating, keep informing. So when the deeming regs came down, we already knew that at some point they would come down. So we knew years in advance. One of the good things that happened for Southern Draw early on was we went and we engaged the Army Air Force Exchange Network. So we put our cigars in a lot of the military bases to reach our brothers and sisters and their families to get some product in their hands. But they always follow a DOD policy on tobacco. And they said, at some point when these deeming regs come down, you're going to have everything registered with GSA or SKUs. You're going to have every type of box, every type of packaging, every cigar in every size. You're going to have all that registered. So before we do business with you, we want to see that all your cigars are registered. We want to see that everything has a barcode, that everything is packaged appropriately, that every cigar has cello so that it can't be touched if and when the time comes where consumers can't touch the tobacco.
Yep.
And it was just logic of all these things. So we said, okay, it's a big investment for us, but we have to do it. If we're going to gamble, let's do the best we can.
Get out in front of it.
So, yeah, you're right. So, and then May of last year, the dimming regs come down, and everybody had different visions. But, and I was on Dojo last week, and Eric asked me the question. I said, yeah, we missed IPCPR 2016. And we were there in 15, by the way, just quietly, and 14 quietly. But when the dimming regs came down in May of last year, everybody else was getting ready for the show. And we looked at our blend book and our production and our forecast and our dreams and hopes and all of our money and said, get on the plane and go to Nicaragua. And I sat down with AJ's team, and they allowed this and said, these are the blends, these are the sizes, these are the different package options types. We want to produce everything. So right before the show, we announced that we weren't coming to the show, and we got a lot of flack because everybody was in a panic. They figured if you didn't show up at the show, you must be done. Right? It happened. And we lost a lot of opportunity based on perception. But the reality of it was we were doing what we felt was right, and that was we produced an enormous amount of our blends in many sizes. As I mentioned, all the core line gets 7 sizes with 7 package options. Those are boxes, bundles, samplers, 2-packs, 3-packs, 4-packs, 10-packs, blah, blah, blah. So we made the effort, and the factory and our friends and the box factories, everybody supported us to make sure we got it done. And we got to ship them in by August 5th of 2018. We had them. We paid our S-chip, so the government took our taxes, acknowledging that we brought them in. We marketed them very selectively, but we sold those to select retailers, and we basically boarded them up in a warehouse, right? So we have a lot of arrows in the quiver. And the only way that won't benefit us in the future is if nothing changes, and then in a couple of years, every product we have has to go through substantial equivalence testing, and it's just mathematically impossible at that point. But we feel so comfortable right now with the 7 blends on the market and the sizes that if we have to go through substantial equivalence and pay for that we can facilitate that. But the beauty of it is, with this extension, maybe over the next couple of years as we grow and more capital becomes available and more people are smoking cigars, and Southern Draw cigars in particular, that we will be able to continue to add those other lines that we have hopes and dreams. So we're not stopping anything that we had planned from the get-go. It was an educated and informed decision up to the point that we don't know what's going to happen, but we knew what the potential was. So I think we did a good job, and a couple of years from now, if the regulations don't change and everything's enforceable and all of our boxes are ugly because we've got warning labels all over it and we've got to test every single product, maybe the outcome is we don't get to put all the new cigars on the market that we want to. But are we comfortable with what we have and what we tried to do in 2014, 15, 16, and 17? And we are. We think we have enough extensions and varieties of options that are coming in these lines that would do very well. But we know that everybody gets excited about new cigars, and we have new things we want to share. That we worked on and invested on. But we're going to keep fighting it and keep participating the best we can. We're not well-heeled financially in a sense that we can't contribute to every association, every group that needs contributions, but we do our best to help educate and inform. So we did a good job, I think, and maybe as Joe and I talked about last night, at some point people will look back and go, Robert was crazy wasting all that money doing it. But we couldn't not do it. We couldn't not do it. We had to. Certainly from a consumer perspective, the appreciation has to be there. That, coin the poker term, you guys were all in. You went absolutely all in, and you're in for the ride. So it's worth noting. Definitely attention to detail, and care and TLC for the product moving forward, and you were able to take that leap of faith. Right. And I also want to mention we get some friends of Stogie Geeks in the lounge here tonight.
Yeah, we got some audience. Thank you for guys for showing up.
Southern Draw fans.
Talk to me about the future. What's non-FDA, like
right.
What can we look forward to?
Up to this point, we kind of give advance warning of what's coming out, and
which they can follow you on your Facebook.
Absolutely, Southern Draw on Facebook. I think Instagram and Twitter, SD Cigars. I think people find we're very active. We're very positive on a daily basis. It's not all about Southern Draw. It's about all those brands and people that we come across that influence us, that we appreciate, that we watch work hard. So it may be Eric Espinosa one day, it may be Skip and Michael, it may be Mr. Steve Saka, it may be AJ, it may be friggin' Jim Robinson up in Pittsburgh with the Leaf by Oscar and Oscar. There's just some good people. So our social media that we reference there is a good way to see what's going on in our daily life, I think. And all the shops and retailers and consumers and media, everybody gets their piece because we're always going to pay homage to everybody that's taking care of us. And I think that's an important part of what we do. At this point, we've called a lot of things private label, or Liga Roberto number this, number that. We've got some phenomenal blends. Maybe, as I say, we'll pull a little Sinatra on the background. The best is yet to come,
Nice.
And it's going to be exciting. But we'll lead up into the show this year. Evolution. This brand and this mission for us has evolved into something so clear to us at this point. From now on, and I can say it here, and this is the first time I've really referenced this, from now on, when Southern Draw releases a new line extension or a new blend, There's going to be 4 components of it. There's going to be a charity component, defined, quantifiable charity component. The first of which is one of our near and dear charities, which will be Cigars for Warriors, which we'll talk about moving into the spring. Secondly, there will be some limited exclusivity for a retail partner or retail partners that are going to also support our charities. And third of all, there's going to be a media partner that's part of that exclusivity and that release, where we all have something unique to offer, but also to gain. And then at the end, all of us get to contribute to that mutual agreed upon charity organization. So the one thing that we can control is our releases and the excitement behind the releases, but we want to do something good with that. So from now on, we've made a decision in-house to make sure. So we've got the first 2 projects next year that are new releases are going to be done with retail and with media partners and some of the corporate partners. But ultimately, in the end, we even talked to a group here in Rhode Island last night about a charity that I think is very important, that really reaches people and takes care of people. And veterans and disabled veterans and homeless veterans is near and dear to our heart. Deployed military is near and dear, but there's also people in our own neighborhoods that need help. And traveling for all those years, seeing how even in a cigar factory today, if a lady goes out on pregnancy leave and is not getting paid, or a husband cuts his finger while he's cutting wood for our boxes, everybody bands together out of their little humble little salaries, and they put it together and they take care of those families. We need to get back to doing that. And I don't mean giving over leftover cigars at the end of the year,
Right.
and tax write-offs. That's fine if you're big and you can give that way, God bless you, but we can't. But we can do something quantifiable that all of us can participate and feel good and see their end results. And unfortunately, charities have taken advantage of a lot of people and their kindness. Right? We don't want that to happen anymore. So the only way to do it is to do something in our own communities that we can see, touch, and feel, and everybody gets to be part of it. And it'll be exciting. So we're going to do some new things next year that really comes down to just doing good and serving people. And I think there's not a better tool for us right now than a cigar to do that.
You have plans to be at IPCPR?
Absolutely,
Awesome.
absolutely. And we'll still have a humble little booth. It's a nice gathering place to, come have a bourbon, a scotch, a cold beer, and a cigar. But it's for us. That's our one time of the year where we get to see everybody.
Sure.
I'm on the road all the time, but my wife's not. Our warehouse team and our family that's involved, they don't get the exposure or the opportunity that I get. So it's that time where they get to come together and see what they're doing, what they're making, the difference they're making. It's great times.
It sounds like you got a great team behind you too.
We do.
So
We
awesome.
truly do. We
That's
truly
awesome.
do.
For the
Joe,
listeners
you have a question?
for the listeners that didn't know, haven't seen any pictures of social media, the past bunch of months. If you want to paint that picture of your booth, taking it back porch scenario, very welcoming. That's I think it's a different game changer as well. It's
Joe, going into the show last year, originally AJ was very kind and offered us an extension. He said, "Why don't Southern Draw join us in the AJ Fernandez booth?" And anybody that's seen his booth the last few years, it's an emulation of his factory. It's
Sure.
the quality, and it's just a great representation of his brand. But as we started looking deeper, AJ had some new releases. He had some incredible repackaging of his San Latano line that was exciting, which is what brought me to AJ. The San Latano Habano Requiem was the cigar for me for years. And it was like, that guy's got a future.
And you're like, I want that guy.
Yeah, I mean, really. And so you talking about being lucky over, finally just stumbled upon it, put my head on his shoulder and cry and go, I need you, brother. But when we looked at it, we had new packaging too. And we had new releases, and we had just released the Rosa Sharon. We knew we were releasing the Jacobs at the show because Jacobs was going to be the 2016 IPCPR release. That's why this thing's been sitting there and aging and just waiting to jump out of the box. And I've been jonesing to share it with the world, but and scared at the same time. But ultimately, we believe that for the best of his brand and the best of our brand, to do something simple. So when you only got 3 months left before the show and all your hopes and dreams and plans for the show are out the window because it didn't fit, what do? And I talked to like 6 or 8 people, and I said, if we're not in the shop, where do we smoke cigars? He goes, oh, your patio. Or it's his patio or her patio or it's their patio. If we go on the road and we're doing an event afterwards and the shop closes up and the staff goes, hey, come over to my patio and have a cigar. We said, that's what we're going to do. Nice. So we didn't spare an expense in the sense that we got a really great location between the hotel and the convention center. But we created something where our family staffed it. And we created these nice 3 sitting areas, one with the primary area that had all of our new cigars and our new packaging laid out for everybody to see. Sharon handled all the order processing and all that, but we had father-in-laws, mother-in-laws, our friends, the Hogans, Phil and Shelley Hogan. We had Kyle and Michelle. These are all people that have put money into this business and time into this, and they always wanted to do more. But for us to stop what we're doing, Sharon and I go, here's how you can help us. They live in California. So they're chomping at the bit. And for this 1 week, they got to come set it up. We didn't hire anybody to set it up.
Yeah.
I towed it out from Texas. Our team built it. We staffed it. We cleaned it.
Do you have pictures of this thing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Can you email Joe pictures, and then we'll get them up on the Stogie Geeks
This
wiki?
video is crisscrossed to the desert. It's a wild scene, you know?
Yeah, it was absolutely great. But it was like these 3 little outdoor seating areas like you have on a patio. It became very comfortable. It became kind of a nice place to hang out.
And people came
and we tell people, they're like, hey, let me get out of this chair and let the next guy come. And I went, you're the most important person in the world as long as you're sitting in that chair.
Yeah.
When you get up and leave on your own free will, then the next guy or gal will sit down. And we were able to spend a lot of time with the media, a lot of time with retailers, and even a lot of time with just our partners in the industry. Because we're not big enough to go to the Circle Bar and spend $3 grand on drinks. But I tell you what, we've got friends that we're bringing, you know, drinks and beers and cigars, and we had a great time and a great conversation. But it came down to what we're in the business for, and it was that hospitality. That our family members just embraced everybody, and they let me jump conversation to conversation. It's funny that during that whole week of the show, I set that booth up when it was 127 degrees in the convention center. It was hot, and I was shorts and nasty, right? But the only the only thing I saw in the whole convention, I went to 2 meetings in AJ Fernandez's booth. I saw Jim and Oscar because their booth was right next door. I saw Enrique with 1502 next to me and visited him twice. And I went to the men's room. But never once from the moment it opened until hours after it closed, because we had to pack our own stuff up while everybody else was partying. We had to do it, you know, with a U-Haul. It was a blessing. I mean, we were so busy, and it wasn't always selling cigars. We actually sold more than we ever produced, so we were really blessed on that sense. You look at day 2 and go, we're out of cigars, you know, and we're like, do we pack it up and leave? And I was like, no, we just keep selling, you know. I mean, just keep selling, baby.
Yeah, man, you go to Square, keep going.
Absolutely. So it just turned out to be kind of a nice gathering place, a very comfortable place that no expectation. We didn't go into it and go, we got to make this much at the show. We would have killed ourselves had we done that. So all the family talking me off the ledge going, let's just enjoy ourselves, relax, let people relax and understand the brand. It was all about sharing the message of the brand, and then they got to have cigars too, and it was fun. So we want to do something similar, I think, in the future. I don't think we ever want to grow to a point where we need to keep up with the Joneses and have bigger and better. And no fault for those. Great, they've successful, and they've got the big $1 million booths. God bless them. But that doesn't make it convenient or comfortable or welcoming to us. We want to do it our way. And I think we want to do something, and we've taken a lot of feedback from people going, you know, more beer. You know, I mean, number one, it's more beer.
So like I said, everything's bigger in Texas.
Yeah, right. So we're looking forward to it.
Sometimes it pays to let it breathe and let it play itself out and go the direction it's supposed to go.
Absolutely. You've been to the factory.
Many times. Absolutely.
Paint a picture for us and the Stogie Geeks listener. You've been to the factory. Hi, I'm Robert Holt. I'm from Southern Draw.
Chief Evangelist.
How does your day go? Like you got there. I'm assuming that you meet the people who are going to construct your cigars and do that.
Right.
Take us through that.
Well, I think the joy is I've been to almost every factory, and I've seen the intricacies of all these operations. AJ happened to be the one that was very open and welcoming. There was no Willy Wonka Wizard of Oz. You can't see behind the curtain with him. It was, if we're going to do business together, we're going to trust each other, and when we shake hands, that means we're ready to go. So what does that mean? Let me take you. The first step was, and I had traveled to many other factories leading up to look for the right partner, you know, or the right partner to just say, we know you need help, come let us help you. So we just weren't sure what was going on. But I tell you, we stayed in, most of the time we'd stay in a little hotel called Los Arcos in Esteli. And we've been to Honduras and Dominican and looked at those factories too. But we wanted to be in Nicaragua because of the proximity to Texas, how quickly we can get in and out as much as I travel. It makes sense. You fly out of Houston in 2 hours, you're in Managua. So it's great, right? But here was the most important. Get up in the morning, and I know the factory opens at 7 o'clock in the morning. So I get over there a little bit early to the big gates. You know, this was when AJ opened his new factory, which subsequently he's opened another new factory. But this one, all these buses, old school buses that used to be on your roads and mine, are there, full of people, motorcycles and bicycles coming through the gates. And I said, tell me about that. Anybody that wants and needs a ride to work is picked up on a school bus like our own children, taken care of to make sure that if their only possibility of missing work is because their transportation wasn't available. Pick them up and bring them to work.
And the school bus is full.
And bring them home after work.
Right.
And then you look at the bicycles and the little motorcycles, and these are terrible roads and potholes and, you know, horses and cows walking across the roads, goats and chickens. I mean, you know, literally it's like everything's free range there, right? It's awesome. But you go, there's no way these bicycles can keep up with this and these motorcycles. And then you look over and say, what's that? And they said, that's a repair shop. The repair shop's open the whole time the factory's open. If your bicycle breaks down, your motorcycle, here's a place to fix it. Here's all the tools. Here's everything you need.
Wow.
And then you walk through the front gates and you look to the left and there's this beautiful little cabin or cottage there, and there's nice little grass, and it looks like it's almost like a first grade classroom. And you go, what is that? That's the daycare. We've got a lot of mothers here that work.
Wow.
And the husbands work at another factory or this factory, right? And ultimately, we take care of people. And then, what is that? Oh, that's a clinic. If someone is ill, if someone's sick, if somebody needs attention, they don't have to miss work for it. We want them to be here. We want them to be taken care of. These are the little things we can do. And at that point, I'm on a cloud. You know, I'm on
a cloud. Just
these are my guys, right?
You know what I'm hearing? Attention to detail.
Yeah,
right. Wow.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'm a nobody, right? I'm walking in as an unknown, right?
Who's this Texan?
Yeah, and I don't know if they picked up on that or not. If they thought
I'm sure they did, sir.
But
your boots?
I might have wore some different ones. But you know, so you know this, and I'm painting the picture of early on my impression of what we saw, and it was, I'm not here for a tour. I'm here to tell you about a dream and a strategy. I'm here to tell you my challenges. I'm here to tell you that this is something we're committed to, but we're looking for the right family to be part of. And it was really AJ's team and family, and there were other staff members that have since moved on in the industry that basically came in and said, how do you like your coffee? And I said, you know, let me get you a couple cigars to smoke. And of course I wanted that. It's early in the morning. I want a cigar and a coffee. You know, it's breakfast. But it was sitting at the table, and AJ comes in and sits down. And I know AJ from San Latano, something I was very fond of as a cigar smoker. And I'd been smoking at that point, what, 15, 18 years, you know. And it was one of my favorite things. And I said, this is what I'm doing. These are my challenges. And here's kind of the first blends that we have. And we worked on production elsewhere, and not to fault them, but it just wasn't right. Whether it was quality or consistency or the relationship, it just wasn't. I didn't feel like it was going to be something we could invest in. And he says, let me show you around. Let me show you around. So
you were brought in and
we walked out of the factory, got into a truck, and went out to the farms. So Finca La Lilia, which is the closest farm, which is just across the street from Padron, beautiful farm, and looking at the detail and the level of work and the quality of every person's contribution to it, this hands-on approach was amazing to know every detail. I know he owns the company, but I mean, it's like if we had 5 cats, we would know the name. He knew the name of every plant that was there, you know, in succession. It was amazing to see how passionate, which tells me he was part of it all the way from that seedling to that nursery to the field. And he walks me through his day, not my day. And I've never really told the story because nobody's asked me the question, but to walk me through his day, which is I'm hands-on in everything that we do. And if you're going to do business with me, you're going to be hands-on in everything you do, because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your business. I'm responsible for mine. And there is no other finger pointing going on. This is my job. And he walked me through all the farms and the fields, and we looked at all the diversity of tobaccos, and then we into the, you know, going in for the first time. At this point, he's starting to grow a little bit, and you're watching these staff members by hand build these curing barns.
Right.
This is not prefab. This is, we cut the trees. We're building this thing.
Doing a curing barn is such a science.
And they're just building them like Legos. And I'm going, man, these guys really know what they're doing, you know. And then you're walking through the process. How much time, you know, for the different tobaccos, and we're looking at the kind of his process and how we do it. And then, of course, we return back to the factory after that, and it comes down to, you know, let's look at the bringing the tobacco in from the curing barn into the fermentation room. You know, reintroducing moisture, bringing them in, stacking them into the pilones, understanding his fermentation process on tobacco. What makes his tobacco so good is the care. And I'm not saying everybody doesn't do it, but I can tell you what, there's some subtle differences that I've observed between all the different, you know, godfathers and kings, as I call them. But I was impressed with the amount of time, because at that point he was growing larger, maybe not as large as some of the other factories, but he was still taking the time like he was only making 100 cigars, you know. Slow it down, do it right. We're hands-on. I mean, literally, it's like when you look at a Pilona tobacco that's been checked X number of times every day since it's been there. It's like when you walk into the mall or airport and you look on the back of the bathroom door and it shows the janitor that checked in every 3 hours, you know.
Sure.
Robert cleaned this bathroom and Joe cleaned this bathroom at noon and other Joe came in at 1 o'clock. It was that way. It was that much hands-on that impressed me. So understanding the fermentation process, the double fermentation, which is traditional for him, going in and you know, putting the tobaccos into the paquetes or the bells for storage for proper aging, and then the separation, understanding that when you look at the floor, and there's tobacco flying everywhere.
Right.
There's not a single leaf. There's not a stem on the floor. There's nothing on the floor, which means everything's being utilized.
Right.
Which means every crumb of bread's being eaten. You know, and I'm from the South, so every fried potato and every, you know, pinto bean is gone. Somebody needs it, and it's being used. And I'm just looking at this, going, this is pretty good, you know. And then it basically puts you on your own to say, you think you know what you want, you think you know how you want it done. Here's your homework, and you know, here's the tobaccos you're looking for, the blends, and we start working on things to a point where it just became magical at that moment. But to walk in to each of the steps in the process, and to really engage with the people on the floor, the not just the managers, not just the team that oversees the quality control and those things, but to see the multiple steps there and spend time with them and watch how passionate they are just about their role. How passionate can you really be about stripping one vein out of 2 tobacco leaves and separating them in color?
Sure.
But they're good, and they're efficient, and they're satisfied that that is their job, and they're doing something good. And it was impressive for me to walk through that process.
We
but,
appreciate it.
you know, it's,
sure.
But in the end, we still get to sit down and smoke them, right? So, you know, this large factory has so many different, you know, disciplines within it, right? But each one of them are as important as the previous or the next. And, you know, when you walk into it, and this is the cellar, right? This is the closing deal. When you walk into the aging room, and you see all these cigars, and you see all the written names and blends and sizes, and it's the things that you've been smoking and the things that you're like passionate about, and it's the things that you go, I get to buy those on my local shop, and they're made right here, and they come right out of there, and then where do they go? We're smoking them. They're like, well, they come over here to quality control, and then they pull them out of the mazos, you know, and they put them on the table, and they touch everything again and go through it and look at it and separate them, and before they ever go to packaging, it's like 3 more levels of quality control. I was like, okay, so we went through all this, and how do they get to my shelf, you know? And it's, now we go into, have you ever had to take cigars and put bands on them?
Yes. Very tough.
It's brutal.
Yes.
And our first,
as a retail cigar shop, I remember when we used to have a house cigar, and we had a bunch of It's a Boy, It's a Girls, and we did the traditional packaged ones, but then we did sell our house cigars in bundles and do that. And I remember us sitting there, and we ruined a few. Like I was like, oh, that's mine to smoke. Oh, that's mine to smoke too. It's pretty control. It's pretty tedious. It is.
And if you're as bad as I am at it, you ruin more than you know that you ruined. Because when they got home and they tried to take the bands off, and half the leaf comes off. But you see their simple little jig that they created to put the bands of any band, and how detailed they were. And I was like, all right, so when do they go in the boxes? Well, you know, the boxes are coming from 12 or 15 different factories. So what do we have to do? We have to go to the box factories and find the right factory for us, for our style of boxes, when it comes to quality and consistency on that, just as much as the cigar, because consumers buy with their eyes.
Yeah.
And I start learning more that a box is not just a box.
Right.
And with the FDA, it's not just a box.
Sure.
It's a box with substantial equivalence, you know, or grandfather design. But it was their desire to put me through my paces and make sure I knew what I was getting into, and make sure that I had options and I had choices, and that I was making the best choice. But when I made the choice, it was as simple as this. I had just been defrauded out of millions of dollars in my life in the telecom industry.
Right.
Working in third world countries with very powerful attorneys and ministers of telecom, ministers of economics, and it was a brutal time in my life, right? And I will never forget how sour and upset I was over it. So I had drafted this massive contract, like, 4 reams of paper, sent it to AJ, and I come in and AJ goes, let me just put it to you this way. You're a farm boy. You grew up in East Texas after you left California. I'm a farm boy from Cuba. He goes, how about you and I just shake hands? And I said, it's not that simple. He said, yes, it is. He said, I execute everything you asked me to execute, and you pay me. And you go sell the cigars. And if you don't pay me, I don't execute everything you asked me to execute. And I said, well, we're going to have to agree on some things when it comes to pricing. He goes, of course. But once we shake our hands, we're family, and we're going to do business that way. And when you get to the point where you're not comfortable doing it that way because I'm too big or you're too big or we're both too big, then let's not do business together anymore.
It's pretty refreshing, huh?
No.
That's
Well,
different.
refreshing.
It was refreshing but scary.
Right.
It is. I've actually in my personal business, my customers, like, there is a genuine embrace, hug, handshake. Some of them are deeper hugs. You know what I mean?
Sure.
But it's the same way.
Absolutely.
With business. Like, if you can't trust me to do what my job is, then there you go.
But unfortunately, many of us through life, we experience things that take that away, take the value of what that handshake used to mean, and it's obviously paid dividends. So we struck the deal, and little things like I walk into his guest house or where his customers usually stay, and the same housekeepers and the same people cooking all the meals, taking care of your every wish, cleaning things that aren't even dirty. This is attention to detail, even just more than a hotel would hospitality. Hospitality to another level. And I think one of the other impressive things is when AJ built his new house for the customers to come down to, which hopefully at some point you'll see, he also built this very large indoor pavilion out back, out by the pool, and on the other side of the wall is the factory, right? You literally get to walk right into it. So you've got a big main house we call the White House. You got 5 or 6 or 7 outdoor rooms that are like really nice casitas. Nice green grass. Don't walk in, there's chiggers. Beautiful pool with a big AJ logo on it. But this pavilion is walled and glass on all sides with a nice bar. Out to the side is a huge barbecue pit where he throws nice parties and mariachis and really makes people feel welcome. But it's a beautiful building, poker tables and domino tables. No TVs. There's outlets for TVs everywhere.
That sounds like my place.
And he says,
another great attention to detail.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
man.
he says, originally it was designed for TVs, obviously. All you Americans come, you want to watch sports and stock markets and all that. And he goes, let me just say this. There's a 60-inch TV right inside the doors in the house. If you want to watch TV, go in there.
If you want to be alone and go watch TV, knock yourself out. If not, this is where it's
out here.
Yeah,
we're having
place.
cigars and conversation. We're getting to know each other.
That's my type
and
of
I
place.
said, that's why we got in this business, to use this tool, 2 chairs and an ashtray. We get to know something about each other. Maybe that goes to the other part of our vision is with all the hate and all the racial issues and religious issues and political issues and northerners and southerners and North Korea, South Korea, it doesn't matter. It happens all over the world. The one great equalizer I think we all know, which is why we're in the business, is if we can sit down with a cigar and have a conversation, maybe we'll learn a little bit about one another so we understand what's made us us and maybe why we believe what we believe. Maybe we'll change each other's opinion of one another, but maybe not. But ultimately, we gave it a hell of a try, right? We got to have a cigar. So, that's just a little bit about the factory and the experience in a country, and I'll finish that kind of long-winded response. My apologies.
That's okay. It's great. It's great.
With saying something that really resonated with my family. I've been in 65 countries. I've been, and maybe actually 67 now. A lot of third world developing, but a lot of industrialized nations in that sense. I have never seen people work so hard for so little, but yet be so content. And that's as simple as I can make it. Yep. And I said, I want to be that guy.
Yep.
I want to work hard. I want to just provide for the family. And I want to be content with it within myself. And that is the most important mission and message coming from Southern Draw today, I think, that I can share with anybody.
No, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. I have one more question for you before we wrap up. But, Joe, do you have any questions? Or are you just still indulging in hanging out?
Just a quick note as you're painting the picture, the long, intricate process, AJ and attention to details, and just, you had mentioned, really slowing things down and appreciating, and I see that as like a euphemism, for life and for the cigar world. That's what we do, in the lounges and wherever we're enjoying premium cigar. Take that TV time out, enjoy, relax, appreciate.
Yes.
That's where I'm at.
It is where it's at, and it's in. You're very fortunate to hold true core to your values, have a strong system behind you of beliefs, and be in a factory that also supports that, and be able to penetrate in an industry. For sure. My final question for you, for this interview, and I certainly hope there will be more over next calendar year for sure. They might be Skyped unless you really have a hankering for some seafood.
We'll try to pin him down.
You can come down, get him down there. Yep. Right? But if you keep doing what you're doing, he'll be here more. So that's
Beautiful
great
thing.
stuff. What's the biggest challenge, non-FDA, right? So what's the biggest challenge that you faced starting a cigar business, and what would you have potentially changed because of that challenge?
Well, I think the biggest challenge was just the fact that we didn't have that pedigree and lineage, and all we had was a basis of knowledge from my travels and observations. And knowing that, we probably wouldn't be well received up front by the market because we didn't come from it.
Sure.
Not retail, not as a rep, not as not as a shop owner, and no capacity. Certainly not family. But I felt like we had a message that would overcome all of that over time. And the only way that message would ever be shared is if we were sustainable, if we were there year after year after year. At some point, people are going to have to listen at least, or they're going to hear it, one way or another. But the challenge there was going to the family and going to the friends and said, I literally just lost millions of dollars on something that was right, that was just, that was a wonderful business venture, but for the wrong reasons. We're trying to do something right. We're trying to do something together. We're trying to trust one another. Will you follow me again? Will you put your hard-earned money and your resource and your time into Southern Draw? Because I couldn't do it on my own. I'd lost everything. And that was a challenge. It was a challenge for me to be penitent enough, to be humble enough to go ask for it. But it was probably more of a challenge for them to say yes.
Yeah.
And we communicate and we visit and we talk a lot about them. They don't get the recognition. They love the brand as much as we do, but they just don't get out. But that was the biggest challenge, I think, for the whole family to get together and say, we're going to do this. We're going to do this, and overcome that. As a company this big, you always got to worry about cash flow. Our production is growing and growing and growing, but that doesn't mean the revenues grow in the same ratios, because more expenses, more travel, more staff. It's just one of those things. But we're at that point in time where we're back to that challenge again, which is we got to go circle the wagons again and pull in some more capital. And it's scary. We go to the holidays going, hey, I tell you what, we'll go. We're not getting each other gifts. We'll have a cigar together by the fire, and we'll get the wood from the neighbor's pile because they got a lot. Kind of thing. But I like it. But that challenge should always come back around, I think, for us to be successful, because if we get comfortable again, I don't want to fall back into what we did in the past, which it was all about the return on investment. Yep. We want our partners and our family to do well, but we don't want to do too well where we don't need to do what we do, if that makes sense. Yep. So our challenge is to be humble every day and remind ourselves that this isn't about becoming wealthy again. This is about being sustainable and making sure that everybody we do business with gets taken care of equally and fairly. Yeah. And I think that's okay.
That's great.
Beautiful thing.
That's great. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for being live in studio. I know you guys got event scheduled for today. You got a
the Gentleman
wine
7 to 9. Come on down.
What do you got?
A port wine event.
Port wine and Southern Draw cigars. That sounds like
packed house, standing capacity.
That sounds like a good time. Or as I would say, that sounds like a hootenanny.
It's a hootenanny. We use that term too.
I love that term. I love that term.
It definitely defines what we're going to be doing later. No, I appreciate the invite and the special time slot, making time for me here in the studio, and I'm looking forward to it. We at Southern Draw, it started in the South.
Yeah.
But we're now in over 40 states and lots of countries, and ultimately to move into New England, and we've done quite a bit in New York, New Jersey in the last
I heard
year.
you got in your first shop in Massachusetts.
There we go. And
a
that's a
shop.
challenge.
Yeah, that is a challenge because it changes the tobacco tax.
It does. It
Firehouse.
does.
Full
Yeah.
number.
So it'll be good. You know, it's going to be a good run, and I think if Joe busts his hump here, Sharon and I'll be able to get out a few times a year, and I'll get my lobster and we'll smoke some sticks, and we'll visit again soon.
That sounds like a plan.
Appreciate you guys.
Yes.
No, thank
Absolutely
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. That was Robert from Chief Evangelist from Southern Draw Cigars. Check them out online, southerndrawcigars.com. I was your host, Joe Hozempa, for episode 255 of Stogie Geeks. Co-host Joe D. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Peace.